The sound of the hammer echoed through the quiet suburban street as I drove the final nail into the wooden post. My arms ached, sweat dripped down my forehead, and my heart pounded like a drum in my chest.
Oh my gosh,
I thought this is really happening. There I was, Sarah Thompson, single mom and part-time artist, standing in my front yard next to what was quickly becoming the most ridiculous thing anyone in Willow Creek had ever seen: a 10-foot-tall inflatable rubber chicken sign perched on a sturdy frame I had built myself. You could hear the footsteps before you saw her. Click clack on the pavement. Then came the voice that could curdle milk. What in the world is that monstrosity? Karen Hargrove, my next-door neighbor and self-appointed neighborhood watch captain, was storming across the lawn like she owned the place. Her face was flushed, lips pursed so tight they almost disappeared. Can you believe this woman? She had the nerve to point her perfectly manicured finger right at my creation and then sweep her arm toward my yard. Sarah, your yard has been an absolute eyesore for months now, with all those half-finished garden beds, the kids' toys scattered everywhere, and those weird art sculptures you call decorations. But this giant chicken thing is the last straw. I'm calling the HOA right now. I took a deep breath, the smell of fresh cut grass and my own frustration mixing in the air. My hands were still gripping the hammer. Listen, Karen, I said, trying to keep my voice steady but feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. The yard isn't perfect, I'll give you that. Life with two kids after the divorce has been tough. But it's my yard, my property. And this chicken, it's my way of saying enough is enough to all the nitpicking. She scoffed, crossing her arms. You're making a mockery of our beautiful neighborhood. People are going to laugh at us. Well, I replied with a smirk, maybe they'll laugh with me instead of at me for once. The dramatic pause hung in the air as neighbors started peeking out windows. Little did Karen know this was just the beginning of her worst nightmare. Let me back up a bit because you need to understand how we got here. It all started 6 weeks earlier when the first HOA letter showed up in my mailbox. Dear Ms. Thompson, it read, your property at 142 Oakwood Lane is in violation of Section 4.2 regarding visual aesthetics. Please remove the clutter and maintain a neat appearance within 14 days or face daily fines of $500. Clutter: my colorful flower beds, my kids' bikes leaning against the fence, and the half-built treehouse I was making for them. I sighed heavily that day, the paper crumpling in my fist as I stood on my porch the warm afternoon. Sun beating down and the distant sound of kids laughing from the park down the street. Karen had been on my case from the moment I moved in after my divorce. She was the president of the Willow Creek HOA, a title she wore like a crown. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, she would walk her perfectly groomed poodle past my house and shoot me that judgmental stare. One day she even stopped to lecture me about how my yard was bringing down property values. Can you imagine the nerve? The smell of her lavender-scented candle from the open window next door always seemed to waft over whenever she complained. I tried to be nice at first, I really did. I mowed the lawn, I planted some rose bushes. But life happens, right? Two kids, soccer practice, art projects for my small online business. It was never going to look like a magazine spread. The final straw came 2 weeks ago at the monthly HOA meeting. I showed up hoping for some understanding. Instead, Karen stood at the podium, her voice dripping with fake concern. Sarah's yard is an eyesore, she declared. It affects us all. We need to enforce the rules or our community will suffer. The room murmured in agreement, a few heads nodding. I felt my stomach drop, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry bees. My face burned with embarrassment and anger. That night I went home, slammed the door, and cried into my pillow, the salty tears mixing with the faint smell of leftover pizza from dinner. Why did she get to decide what my home looked like? That's when the idea hit me like a lightning bolt. I was scrolling through my phone late at night, the glow lighting up my tired face, when I saw an ad for giant inflatable advertising chickens. 10 feet tall, bright yellow, ridiculous and impossible to ignore. A slow smile spread across my lips. Oh, Karen, you want an eyesore? I'll give you one you'll never forget. The next morning I ordered the biggest one they had along with materials to build a sturdy base. It arrived in a massive box that took up half my garage, the cardboard smelling new and industrial. My kids Jake and Emma thought it was the coolest thing ever. "Mom, is that a giant chicken for us?" they asked, eyes wide with excitement. "You bet it is," I told them, laughing for the first time in weeks. Building it took days of hard work. I spent evenings after the kids went to bed sawing wood, hammering posts, the rhythmic thud mixing with the crickets chirping outside. Sweat soaked my shirt, my muscles burned, but every swing of the hammer felt like a little piece of revenge. I painted the sign in bold letters that would face Karen's house: "Your rules, your problem." The rubber chicken itself was hilarious, its beak curved in a permanent silly grin, the feathers detailed in bright yellow and orange. I could already picture her reaction. Would she scream? Would she call the police? The anticipation made my heart race faster than the construction itself. By the time I finished the base and inflated the chicken, the sun was setting, painting the sky in pinks and oranges. I stood back, wiped my brow, and let out a long, satisfied sigh. It looked absurd, towering over my yard like a beacon of defiance. The faint, rubbery scent lingered in the air, mixing with the evening dew. Tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow Karen would get what was coming to her. Little did I know the chaos was about to explode in ways even I couldn't imagine. But right then, standing there with the giant chicken looming behind me, I felt powerful for the first time in months. This was my yard, my rules, and my ridiculous revenge. The next morning the neighborhood woke up to a sight no one could ignore. I stepped out onto my porch, coffee mug in hand, the steam rising warm against my face, and there it was, my 10-foot rubber chicken, standing tall and proud in the bright morning sunlight. The yellow plastic gleamed, the silly grin catching every ray. I could hear the soft hum of the inflation motor, keeping it upright, a steady reminder that this wasn't a dream. My kids were jumping up and down on the grass, their laughter ringing out like music. Mom, it looks awesome," Emma squealed, her pigtails bouncing. Jake high-fived me. "Best mom ever." Word spread fast.
Look at the size of that
Drove
thing.
by, heads turning, phones coming out to snap pictures.
What is happening in this neighborhood?
A few neighbors waved, some chuckled, others shook their heads, but no one could stop staring. The dramatic composition of my little front yard had changed everything. Then, just like clockwork, I heard the familiar click-clack of heels. Karen was coming, and she was not happy. She marched right up to the edge of my property line, her eyes bulging at the sight of the chicken. "Sarah, what have you done?" she sputtered, her voice cracking with outrage. "This is a direct violation of every HOA rule we have. It's hideous, it's distracting, and it's lowering our property values as we speak." I took a slow sip of my coffee, the rich aroma filling my nose, and smiled sweetly. Good morning, Karen."
Good morning, Karen. Like it?
"You said my place was an eyesore, so I figured I'd lean into it. Big time. Shade of purple. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting," she snapped, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. This will not stand. By afternoon the whole block was buzzing. I could hear whispers from across the fence, the scent of barbecue from a nearby yard mixing with the tension in the air. My phone started blowing up with texts from other neighbors. Some were supportive, "Can I get a picture with the chicken?" Others were more cautious but amused. One even said, "Finally someone stands up to her." It felt good, really good. But Karen wasn't done. She spent the rest of the day knocking on doors, rallying the troops. I watched from my window as she gestured wildly, her voice carrying on the breeze. By evening she had organized a group chat blasting messages about how my chicken was a public nuisance. The pressure was building, I could feel it in my chest like a tight band. Was I going too far? A sigh escaped my lips as I tucked the kids into bed, their excited chatter about the chickens still echoing in the house. No, I told myself. This was justice, plain and simple. The emergency meeting was scheduled for the next night at the community center. I walked in, head held high, the cool air conditioning hitting my skin after the warm evening walk. The room was packed, chairs scraping against the tile floor. Karen stood at the front, her posture rigid like a general ready for battle. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we have a serious issue with one of our members. Sarah Thompson's yard has become a circus, complete with a giant inflatable chicken. We must vote to enforce fines and demand its removal immediately."
That's ridiculous. She
Murmurs
can't do
rippled
that.
through the
What about
crowd.
bylaws?
I stood up, my
With all
voice
due
steady but my
respect,
pulse
Karen,
racing.
my
With all
yard
due
is on
respect,
my
Karen, my
property.
yard is on my
The
property.
rules say
The rules
neat,
say neat
but
and
not
orderly, but they don't
boring.
say boring.
And
If you want perfect, go live in a museum. Laughter broke out here and there. Karen's eyes narrowed. This isn't funny, she hissed.
Funny.
You're undermining the entire community.
But
The
Karen,
debate
the
went back and
environmental
forth,
study hasn't even
voices
been
rising,
completed
the
yet.
smell
We
of
can't
stale
wait any
coffee
longer,
from the
Sarah.
table in the corner
community
filling the room.
overwhelmingly supports this initiative.
Some sided with me, calling Karen out for her constant nitpicking. Others worried about precedent. By the end, no decision was reached, but the tension was thicker than ever. I left the meeting with my head high, but inside I wondered what she would do next. That night, as I lay in bed, the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the curtains, I heard a soft thud outside. I peeked out and saw Karen standing on her side of the fence, staring at my chicken like it personally offended her. Her sigh was loud enough to carry across the yard. Oh, this was going to be fun. Anymore, it was a statement, and Karen was about to learn exactly what that meant.
Now a statement.
The days after the meeting turned into a full-blown neighborhood war. Karen escalated fast. She started a petition online complete with before and after photos of my yard, the chicken front and center. The caption read, "Protect our community from visual pollution." I saw the shares piling up, my stomach twisting with a mix of anger and disbelief. How could one woman have this much power? I countered the only way I knew how. I posted my own pictures on the local social group, the giant chicken proudly displayed with it. Caption that read, "When life gives you HOA complaints, make giant chicken art." The responses flooded in, some laughing emojis, others full support stories of their own Karen run-ins. The local news even picked it up, a reporter showing up at my door, microphone in hand. "Ms. Thompson, can you tell us why the rubber chicken?" I smiled for the camera, the warm afternoon sun on my back. "It's simple," I said. "Over my own home. This is my way of saying no more."
No more.
The clip went mildly viral in our town, people sharing it with comments like, "Finally someone fights back." Karen was furious. She called the police twice, claiming the chicken was a hazard. The officers showed up polite but clearly trying not to laugh. "Ma'am, it's not illegal," they told her after inspecting the sturdy base I built. "It's just a sign." Was clicking angrily, the scent of her frustration almost visible in the air. A minor twist came when some neighbors started showing their support in creative ways. One family left a tray of cookies on my porch with a note, "Thanks for the laugh." Another offered to help mow my lawn so I could focus on the chicken defense. It felt like the tide was turning, the community splitting right down the middle. I could hear kids giggling as they walked by, pointing at the chicken, their parents shushing them but smiling too. Through it all, my kids were my rock. Jake and Emma posed for pictures with the chicken, their laughter cutting through the stress like sunshine. "Mom, can we name him Clucky?" they asked one evening, the smell of homemade spaghetti filling the kitchen. I laughed, hugging them tight. "Clucky it is." But Karen wasn't giving up. She dug into my past, somehow finding old posts from my divorce days and twisting them into ammunition for her next meeting. At the follow-up HOA gathering, the room was even more packed, the air thick with anticipation and the faint smell of nervous sweat. She presented her evidence, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Sarah has been through a lot, but that doesn't excuse her disregard for the rules." I stood my turn coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice clear. "This isn't about rules anymore. It's about control. Months over things that don't hurt anyone. My yard is lived in, loved in, and now it's got a giant chicken that makes people smile. If that's an eyesore, then maybe the real problem is her attitude." Gasps filled the room. Karen's face went pale, then red. "You'll regret this," she muttered under her breath as the meeting adjourned without a clear vote. The drama was far from over, but I felt a surge of empowerment, the kind that makes your chest swell and your steps lighter. That night, as I sat on my porch, the cool breeze carrying the distant sound of traffic and the soft glow of the chicken under the porch light, I reflected on everything. This silly sign had become so much more than revenge. It was my stand, my voice. And Karen was feeling every bit of it. Little did I know the biggest twist was still coming. The pressure from Karen intensified like a storm cloud hanging over the neighborhood. She started leaving passive-aggressive notes on my door typed on fancy HOA letterhead demanding immediate removal. The ink smelled fresh and official every time I crumpled one up and tossed it in the trash. My phone rang constantly with anonymous calls, heavy breathing, then a click. I knew it was her, the frustration building in my gut like a knot that wouldn't loosen. Then came the hypocrisy bomb that changed everything. One of my supportive neighbors, a quiet older man named Mr. Ellis, pulled me aside one afternoon, the sun warm on our shoulders. "Sarah," he whispered, "I think you should see this." He showed me photos from years ago before Karen became president. Turns out her own yard used to be a mess, old cars parked out front, overgrown weeds, the works. She had hired a crew to clean it up right before running for HOA president, and now she acted like perfection was the only option. The double standard hit me hard, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Oh, the irony. I shared the photos anonymously in the group chat. The neighborhood erupted. Comments poured in. Is this the same Karen who knew? The tide shifted even more in my favor. Karen tried to deny it, but the screenshots didn't lie. Her voicemails to me grew more unhinged, the anger cracking through her usual polished tone. "You think you're so clever," she hissed in one message, "but you'll pay for this." The confrontation came to a head on a Saturday morning. I was watering my flowers, the gentle spray misting my face, when Karen burst through my gate, her face twisted in pure rage. "This ends now," she screamed loud enough for the whole block to hear. The chicken, the mess, the defiance, I won't stand for it. My husband, who had been helping with the kids, stepped out, fists clenched, but I held up a hand. "No, honey, I got this." "Karen," I said calmly, the water still trickling from the hose. "You've spent months making my life miserable over nothing. This chicken stays. And if you keep pushing, maybe the whole town will learn about your own yard history." She lunged forward, pointing wildly, her perfume overwhelming in the closed space. "You're trash," she spat, "just like your yard." The words stung, but I stood tall, the giant chicken looming behind me like a silent guardian. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, phones out, the drama unfolding like a movie. In that moment, I felt every emotion crash over me, the frustration, the exhaustion, but also the sweet taste of standing my ground. Karen stormed off, but not before tripping over a stray toy in my yard, her perfect composure cracking as she stumbled. The crowd chuckled softly, and I couldn't help but smile. Karma was circling closer than she realized. The final showdown happened at the big annual block party, the air filled with the smell of grilled burgers and laughter from families. The giant chicken had become a landmark by then, kids posing for pictures, adults snapping selfies. Karen showed up late, her expression sour as vinegar. She marched straight to the HOA table, demanding a vote to fine me into oblivion. But the crowd had other ideas. One by one, neighbors stood up, sharing stories of her bullying. Mr. Ellis presented the old photos, again the evidence undeniable. Karen's face drained of color, her hands trembling. "This is ridiculous," she protested, but her voice lacked its usual bite. Then the real twist landed. Turns out the HOA board had received complaints about her own conduct for months. The vote wasn't about my chicken anymore, it was about her leadership. She was removed as president on the spot, the murmurs turning to applause. Karen stood there stunned, the weight of her actions crashing down. She glared at me one last time, but there was no fight left, just bitter defeat. As she walked away, head down, the giant chicken seemed to grin even wider in the afternoon sun. I let out a long, deep sigh, the tension finally releasing from my shoulders. The neighborhood felt lighter, somehow, the breeze carrying away the old drama. In the end, my ridiculous rubber chicken didn't just win the battle, it brought the community together. It reminded everyone that perfection isn't the goal, living authentically is. I kept the chicken up as a reminder, and even started a little side business making custom yard art for others fighting their own battles. To anyone out there dealing with a Karen in your life, stand tall, get creative, and don't let them dim your light. Justice comes in the strangest forms, sometimes a 10-foot rubber chicken. And trust me, the view from the other side is pretty hilarious. Life is too short for boring yards or bitter neighbors. Embrace the chaos, make your mark, and watch the Karens of the world learn their lesson the hard way. Clucky, and I say thank you for listening to my story.
And now
Now go make your own unforgettable mark.